Hello and welcome to the Realty Debate. First quarter of the new financial year is about to end. The sales figures are dismal. Most reports are indicating that the new launches are also declining steadily. Let's take a look at how it's affecting the whole real estate sector. But before we do that, let me introduce you to my panel. I'd like to introduce you to Rohit Gera. He's a Managing Director, Gera Development Private Limited. We also have with us Venkatesh Gopalakrishnan. He's CEO, Shapurji Palanji Real Estate. We have Siddharth Goyal, Senior Director, Research Services, India, Cushman & Wakefield. And we also have with us Pankaj Kapoor. He's Founder and Managing Director, Lysis Forest. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Before we get into this debate, I would like you all to listen to a few points that we've culled out from the Cushman & Wakefield report. According to this report, top 8 cities witnessed residential launches of approximately 25,800 units in the first quarter of 2017, registering a 16% decline from the corresponding period last year. Project launches are down 8% since the announcement of RERA. A closer look at the trend indicates that launches have seen a steady quarter-on-quarter decline for the last 4 quarters, corresponding with the announcement of Real Estate Regulatory Act, that is RERA. Now, that was announced in March last year, and the demonetization exercise also happened in November 2016. Well, it's not so bleak. Everything is not bleak. There is some encouraging trend that we can see, and it's in the affordable segment. Since the announcement of RERA, the share of affordable segment in total launches has improved to 30% compared to 25% in the same period in 2015-16. So these are few points that we have taken out from this report, and we want to know whether all this is happening because of the RERA effect or there is some reason. Is it the compounding slowdown that we've been seeing for a couple of years, or is it the RERA effect? I would like to begin with you, Rohit. What do you think? I'm assuming that launches are down in your area as well. What do you feel? Is it RERA effect, or you feel that this has been happening for a while and it's continuing to do so?
No, I think the fact is that the number of projects being launched, certainly in the markets that we track very closely, like Pune as an example, over the last 2 years, we've seen the first half of the year a clearly reducing trend. So what we saw as 650 new projects launched in the first half of 2015 went down to about 530 in 2016 and has now gone down to about 430 new projects in 2017. So clearly, this is an ongoing trend. This is over the last 3 years, and certainly that doesn't take into account RERA in the first of these 3 years. So I think it's an overall sentiment-driven. You add to it the demonetization, you add to it now RERA, and really I think in this year is when we realize that the government is completely serious about bringing RERA in. There is a deadline date. States started coming out with the rules is when things have really started heating up from the developer's perspective in terms of the real understanding of all the kind of things that are needed to be done, and therefore there's no surprise that the launches are down.
Okay. So Venkatesh, what about Mumbai? We've seen that the launches have dropped by 24% in the first quarter of 2017. Do you think because RERA is coming in, the developers are trying to comply to it, they're still finding their feet, they're trying to still adjust to this new situation?
Yeah, I think, if you look over the past 2 years, the demand has been slow. And, that is a reason which is overarching, and within that, you had demonetization which came in November of 2016, and now you have RERA. So I think what is happening is that because of RERA, people have probably put ahead their plans of launches because they have to follow RERA in terms of registration of the projects before launches. And for ongoing projects, especially in Maharashtra where the rules are out, they're trying to kind of learn the new way of selling, the new way of marketing, which has to be RERA compliant. And therefore, I think we would see that in this quarter, especially in May, June and July, the sales would be a little slower than expected because people would be kind of learning the ropes of what RERA is actually stipulating. and then I think the teething problem will get over in 3 to 4 months. But the overarching problem of the slow rate of residential sales in Mumbai and the rest of the country will continue, which I feel will continue for at least the next 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay, so you feel that this might continue for 1.5 to 2 years. That's a long span. I hope it picks up before that. But Pankaj, what do you say? Usually your view is contrary to a lot of people. So today, what do you have to say about this?
Yeah. You know, I see this is not a, doomsdays. It's like a new wave which is coming up. If you look at that, why the launches are down, if a city, most of the cities in major metros in India, if you look at, for last 3 years, they've been maintaining more than 50 months or months inventory. So if you look at any market which has been maintaining 50, 60 months or months inventory, certainly puts the new launches into a cautious zones, because a lot of developers, frankly speaking, thinking about like, because demand is not really picking, there's already huge inventory available in the market. So there's enough stock to be sold in the market itself is a very big reasons why the new launches has been down. And apart from that, as the Venkatesh mentioned, that earlier we had demonetizations and now we have got RERA. So a lot of compliances which builders have to now do, and they also have to look into a new design of marketing. Earlier it used to be pre-launch and the property used to be get sold and all those things. I'll give you several examples. In 2010, quarterly new launches in terms of units in Bangalore used to be close to 20,000 units. Okay. This was only in 2010 and it has been coming down since then. And right now, if you look at it, has come down to close to 3,000 units. But it has not happened only in the last 4 quarters. It has been happening for last 3 or 4 years, and launches has been declining largely because my inventory, which once upon a time used to be 35,000 units in Bangalore, has grown to become close to 1 lakh units. So the amount of available inventory and the slow sales are one of the major reasons why the new launches has really come down. But having said that, I feel that the new launches now is coming into a different product mix. Earlier it used to be more into luxury segments and all those things. Builders are now are looking at launching into affordable segment.
Siddharth, it's your report. So what do you think?
So, Anjali, basically, I think it's a combination of factors. Yes, an oversupply in terms of the inventory overhang was definitely impacting the sentiments, and the number of launches across various cities had been coming down in the last 3 years, as everyone else has said. But what we had also seen was that in 2016, in the first quarter and the second quarter, the numbers were positive actually compared to the previous years, compared to 2015. And then when we had demonetization come in, and also the demonetization not only signaled, basically a transformation within the housing sector, but it also signaled the intention of the government to tackle the reforms that are needed in the housing sector. And that is why a lot of developers then had to hold back on their plans, because what we've also seen, which our report talks about, is that in 2016 the unit sizes have decreased by nearly 14 to 15% compared to the previous year. So a lot of developers had gone back to the drawing boards, and they were focusing on trying to launch projects or units which met the demand of the buyers, because like Pankaj has already mentioned, a lot of the units were launched in the higher end and luxury segments. So a lot of this realignment was taking place. So I wouldn't blame RERA for the launches, but what we are trying to say is the fact that the market is undergoing a structural transformation where developers are gearing up to work under a new regime and launch projects which will meet the requirements and demands of RERA.
Okay. So Rohit, as we heard, Pankaj says the inventory is becoming higher and higher. It's mounting, and we see that the sales are going down. Do you feel that this is going to affect your prices as well? Because if restructuring of the sector has to happen and something has to benefit people, then that is the first thing we want. So is that going to happen?
So I think we've heard this a lot, that this is prices coming down is something we want. And I don't think a professional developer really is too fussed about prices coming down, but I think we need to keep a couple of things in mind when it comes to pricing. As the number of launches come down, the total supply also comes down correspondingly. The need for housing in India continues to be at an all-time high. The question is, how do you convert that need into demand? And as long as the need is there, if the number of homes available come down, we've seen this in the past, there is a shortage scenario, you see prices moving upward.
But
the other thing is,
there a possibility of number of homes coming down right
well,
now?
if you look at the number of projects being launched, which is exactly what we're talking about.
But what about the inventory?
So exactly. So the real estate market is such that that overhang of inventory can change very, very rapidly. So let me tell you a couple of other quick things, right? Last 3 years, prices have certainly in most markets come down somewhat. And in real terms, they're down 25 to 30% over the last 3 years if you look at it. So clearly, I think affordability of homes has definitely gone up over the last few years. The second is the aspect of the cost structure as far as developers is concerned in order to comply with all things which are required for RERA. And this is anywhere on the cost side. We've done an assessment. It could be as high as 400 to 500 rupees a square foot, depending on your financing structures and so on. Now, ultimately, this cost has to be borne by the end customer. What I think
400 to 500 rupees per square foot, you're saying?
Yes, exactly. And I'll tell you, and we can break this down, but I'll tell you this, from the end customer's perspective, the overall cost of ownership as a result of RERA is going to come down. And when I say overall cost of ownership, I'm really talking about your pre-AMIs, your delay costs, your holding cost, your repair cost. Okay. So that total cost of ownership will come down. But the sticker price, what you'll pay to the developer, because you're transferring the risk of all those risks that the customer was bearing in the past, when you transfer that to the developer, it will come at a higher price.
Okay, so this is something I want to ask because Venkatesh, in my opinion, developers are sort of split about this. Some say the price is going to go up, some say it's not going to get affected. What do you think? What is your opinion on this?
So, it depends market to market. I mean, let's talk about Mumbai. Mumbai has generally been quite resilient, in terms of pricing and the prices especially going down drastically. So where, there is a huge overhang, there are huge pipelines, the demand continues to be weak, we will see a higher impact of prices going down. For example, I would single out cities such as Mumbai and Bangalore. And also let me give you an example that, let's say that before in terms of velocities, before demonetization, supposing you were selling 100 units, obviously the months of November, December and January were extremely bad for all the developers across the country. But we certainly saw a pickup in February, March and April. And, we would say that in March and April, we were at 75 to 80% velocities as compared to the pre-demonetization level without undertaking any price cut. So I would feel that, I agree with Rohit on those points that since we're passing on, the customer is passing on the risk to the developer, he will have to pay a higher ticket size and it will be ease of maintenance. To that extent, the prices will go up. But on an overall perspective, I think what is being reflected is a slower velocity rather than a price cut. I think developers are, especially in the affordable segment, quite reticent to cut the prices because their margins, which are already under pressure, will come under further pressure. So yes. I would see this era, and that's why I mentioned 1.5 to 2 years. I would see that this, the regime of lower price cuts or maintaining the price continuing for the, till the demand picks up for the next 1.5 to 2 years, and that will be reflected more in slower velocities for the developer rather than lower pricing.